Nick Cooper, and I want to welcome you to Circle City Motorworks. Have you ever found that you are unhappy with the lighting in your garage? I know I'm unhappy with the lighting in here. Currently there are a handful of single tube fluorescent lights installed, and I'm not a big fan of fluorescents. I do think they beat old incandescent most of the time, but what I want to have is some LED replacements for my fluorescent tubes, but I want to do the ballast bypass so I don't have to worry about the ballast anymore. I will no longer have to worry about the cold. I don't have to worry about that ballast going out and costing quite a bit for most places you can get them. I want to go ahead and bypass that thing altogether. I'm just not a big fan of them. So I have a single tube fluorescent light fixture that I want to put an LED ballast bypass tube into it. So I'm going to take you through that today. Remember, electricity is nothing to play with. So I recommend that before you even take that cover off, you kill the power at the breaker. If you have other things on that circuit that you can test for dead just by flipping that light switch on and off, make sure nothing comes on that circuit and you're comfortable with that, that's great. I don't do that. I recommend getting something like this. This is just a Southwire brand. It is a voltage detector. I call them sniffers. They sniff out the voltage. They don't really do that. I've been made fun of a lot for that, but I still do it because I like it. But this one, you turn it on. It's got that little green LED in there, unless it's found electricity. Now this is a hot wire. It goes to my radio here. It turns red. It beeps. It lets you know that there's power there. I prefer to use this. Once I get up there, I could take that cover off and I could wave this around in there, put it against the wires, make sure there's no power coming to those wires. That way I don't get bit. I don't want to get bit. So I don't want anybody to get bit. So go ahead and pick one of these up. They're fairly cheap. I want to say this one was $20 or less, and there were cheaper ones even than this. Just go get you something like this. We want you to be safe. For my particular fixtures, I just take the cover off this way. We're going to go ahead and do this all on the bench. That way, it's not as cumbersome for me to do it above my head. Now, if you don't know how to take these bulbs in and out, it's pretty simple. You just rotate them in their sockets, and they'll just slide out. Now, sometimes on these little less expensive models, these, I'm not real sure what we call it. These terminals, they can be kind of wobbly, so it can get a little tricky putting them back in there. What you're doing is you're rotating these pins to slide them in, and then once you've got both ends in place, then you will rotate to lock them into the sockets. Now don't ever, if you find the socket turned, don't ever try to turn it with a screwdriver, or you will find a little bit of voltage coming into your arm. To remove this panel, they will have these little clips in there, and you will rotate them. They don't squeeze, they just rotate. And that will be able to let you remove that cover. Now be careful with this cover. They are very thin sheet metal and they are very sharp. And then you get down to the ballast. Now this was already removed when I started, so unfortunately I did not get to show you how it was. But basically, you would have these, this is black and your white, so that's your hot and your neutral. And we're just going to do away with all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and get this ballast out of here. Get these screws all the way out of here. I don't need them. And there's your ballast. 120 volts was this one. And when they go bad, they have different types, and when they go bad, they're bad. You can't really do anything about it. I'm not a big fan of that whole thing. But this right here is where your power will come through. You got this little plastic guard in here so you don't have your power cables going through this sheet metal. That way you don't strip it and end up having a dead ground to your power, because this over here is your ground screw, and I'll show you how we're going to do that with it being on the table. But yeah, so that's how you remove all that, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next part. Now the brand I'm working with is Fiat, I don't know how to pronounce it, F-E-I-T. I picked them up at our local home improvement store. It's the closest one is Menards. That's the one I went to. The price point, it was on sale, and so I picked those up. I picked up enough to do half of what I want in here. I'm going to go get the other half later. I just wanted to make sure how I want to stagger them in the garage, and we'll cover that in another video. But I want to go ahead and open this up now for you and show you what we're getting into. Now, since all of this is stripped down to where I need it to be, I'm going to go ahead and take this out of its box. And inside the box will also be a couple of connectors and instructions. There's the connectors. I get the instructions out. Here's the instructions. And our LED ballast bypass tube. Now, another thing I like about it is the pins are plastic, so in case you were to leave a ballast in there, and if it were still hooked up and somebody got in there later and didn't know what they were looking at, if they hooked that ballast back up, it should not actually damage anything. It should all be good. Okay, now that the ballast is out, everything is clear the way I want it to be, I'm going to go ahead and feed a fake power wire into the back. It is not hooked to anything, it's just to give you a reference. When you get up there to swap yours out, everything should be already run into the fixture, and then you're just going to go ahead and tie on to that. So, I'm going to pull it through, that way I can reach back here. Got enough clearance for my ground screw. Now I need this stripped off, so always cut away from yourself. And in this right here, the hot and the neutral are on either side of the bare ground wire. So I'm going to cut right in the middle. That way I'm cutting, if I cut through, I am cutting on that bare ground wire and not tearing up the sheath on the white or the black. Black being hot, white being neutral. Go ahead and strip that off. It just peels right off there. It's pretty flimsy. And because I want to get it out of the way, I'm going to cut it off. Boom. How that works. So, I have this screw. I have my screwdriver. Shorten that out, or turn that out a little bit. It's even got a little notched washer on this one, which is pretty handy. So I need to come up high enough. I don't want to take it out. Come up high enough to get that ground wire. Oops, I took it out. Underneath that washer. Now, okay. I need to have that bent over tight enough radius that it will go around that screw fairly snugly. Put a little hook in there. What I'm going to do is get that hook around that screw, get that open washer the way it is, to have the opening on the ground wire, and then screw all this down. Being careful. Keep in mind that I have the opening of that wire to be tightened when I'm tightening the screw, because I'm turning the screw to the right, so I have the opening of that wire pointing to the right. That way it doesn't back out. Okay, now that I have my ground wire hooked up, I can pull any excess slack out of here that I need to. And when using these included Wago connectors with the LED ballast, or the LED ballastless tube, there is a diagram on the side to show you how far to strip it. So I'm going to match that up. Oop, right there. It's drawn to be like that. I know where it's at based on my finger. Use a 14 gauge stripper. Give it a little twist. When you cut the sheath, there you go. You're going to do the same for the neutral. I could just match it up to that, but I'm just going to go ahead and push it up to this. Oops, right there. The clamp, look at the squeeze, and we'll get twisted a little bit. Alright, slide it right off of there. Now these are solid wires, so if you flex them too much, they will break. Now, if you haven't noticed already, there is a dilemma with my cover. My cover here has no way for this wire that's supposed to be on this side of the cover to get through. So, in my instance, I need to drill a hole in this cover. I flip it over, and there's a defined mark where it had been previously installed. So as long as I am outside that really clean spot and in this kind of dusty spot, I will be fine. Really, when working with any metal, I prefer to wear leather gloves. That way that I don't get all cut or scraped up. It's a good stop. Generally will keep metal from coming into my skin. But I think even this sheet metal here, if it was improperly handled, even with leather gloves, it could cut through. So, to reiterate what I was talking about, we got this line here where it was mounted previously, so that means from here on there's an opening in the bottom of that, or in the fixture. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball that to be about here. And see if I can't have some support. It might be a good idea to put a wood block back there. You know what? I might go ahead and just do that. That way we don't have a violent end. Try to keep metal shavings off of your clothes. They'll get there, but try to mitigate as many as possible. And now I have a hole. It's not quite centered, but it's going to be all right for me. All right, now that I have the hole, I'm going to go ahead and, keeping this wire set right here, closer to this end of the fixture, where all the power's at, I'm going to run it through there. Now this product actually came with this kind of guard on it. That way we won't have to worry about it sliding through this sheet metal, which is actually a very nice feature. To use these, all we do is we push the wire into place. Now these wires came already tinned. That means they have solder on them. They are fairly rigid. I do not believe that this would work if they were not done that way. So just squeeze that little guy down in there. There we go. Give it a tug, make sure. Now it's locked. You'll have to wreck it to take it apart. Now remember, don't put a hot in there. There's a lot of spots in there. This is just for my neutral now that I've put a neutral in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this neutral in there. Squeeze that down in there, and it's locked, ready to go. And then you get your second one for your hot. Come on. Get that sheath lined up. There we go. Push past that sheath. And on that one. There we go. And now it's good to go. It's ready to be finished up. And now feed this back in here. This one up in here. And get as much slack out of there as possible. Just tuck all that excess up in there. You can trim it if you want. I'm not going to worry about it. You might want to trim it if you are having difficulties with this all up on a ladder or something. So I'm going to go ahead and lock down my cover. Alright, make sure, give it a nice little tug. Stress test it. Do the same down here, make sure it's lined up. Just turn it, twist lock that thing into place. Fantastic. Make sure you get everything lined up and then turn it in a direction that pushes the wire down towards the cover or up towards the cover, and we're locked in. Now essentially you are done. If you turn your power back on, everything should come up correctly. Put your cover on or no cover, however you decide to do it. Because this is plastic, I imagine I will run without a cover, just because it'll be a little brighter. These are not quite as bright as I had hoped. I'd seen some that were much brighter, but these are going to work just fine for my setup. This is not a very large space. But yeah, so that is basically the end of it. And once you power it up, she should be good to go. LED, fluorescent. The tools used in this how-to video: reversible screwdriver, wire strippers, use a knife, a drill, and for safety I use this AC voltage detector and my trusty leather gloves. And there you have it. That's how you change the regular fluorescent tube to an LED ballast bypass tube that you can get at most home improvement stores. There's Menards in this area. I grabbed mine at Menards. Mine were on sale for I think $15, so I think usually about $20, which is, from what I've found, generally the price of a ballast. So then you would have to buy the ballast, and you would also have to buy bulbs as replacements. Another thing, I was looking at the specifications on the bulb itself, and it shows that it can be used from 100 volts to 277 volts. So you should be able to use it on regular 120 or 240. Whatever you have in your garage, it should be able to handle it, unless you go up to 480, which is fairly industrial, and I would highly doubt that you have that in your garage. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video and like what you learned, go ahead and like the video, and subscribe, and maybe even hit that notification bell, and that way you get notified whenever I put a new video up. Alright, so thanks for watching. Have a good one. Crickets are being jerks.